Good morning. I'm Kathy Ray, Dean of the University Libraries and Teaching and Learning Technologies here at the University of Nevada, Reno. And I'm sitting here alone in my office, but just down the hall is my guest for today, and we are not able to speak face-to-face as we wanted to, but we are going to have a virtual conversation instead. Due to COVID, we're doing lots of things differently to keep everyone safe. I am delighted to welcome Joe Guild here today to be our guest. For those of you who don't know Joe, Joe is a fourth-generation Nevadan and a third-generation Nevada lawyer. He is a writer, a rancher, a husband, a father, a grandfather, and he is with us today because he is also the University Library's 2020 Distinguished Alum. He is a longtime library's board member and an ardent friend and supporter of the library. This February, we've been celebrating National Library Lovers Month, and we couldn't think of a better way to close out this month of celebration than to talk with Joe, an accomplished university alum, as well as one who's been such a supporter of the library itself and a longtime member of our board. Welcome, Joe.
Great to see you through the technology, Kathy.
Well, thank you. Joe, I really appreciate your time. It's right before the legislative session, and as I said, you are a Nevada lawyer and are going into a very busy season. So we really appreciate you taking a few minutes today to talk with us and all of the library lovers out there who will enjoy hearing what you have to share with us. You are an author yourself, and you are a lover of libraries. You have a special relationship with books and the written word. So here in the library, as I look around, we have maybe 100 miles of bookshelves with books on them and millions of books. But I want to hear a little bit about the books on your personal bookshelf. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. In my office part, I've got, for instance, 6 dictionaries and 2 thesauruses, and I turn to them quite a bit because I do a fair amount of writing in my work, and as you said, I also have written a book, and I also write a monthly column for a regional agricultural newspaper, and I've done that for over 20 years. So I'm usually working on a project, and so yeah, the reference books are important, really important. As far as the other books, I've got a fairly significant Nevada collection. I've got some first editions, Walter Van Tilburg Clark's City of Trembling Leaves, some books that Robert Laxalt signed and gave to my parents because my dad and Robert Laxalt and all of his siblings grew up across the street together in Carson City, so they were all good friends. So I've got some little treasures like that. I have a set of books written by Theodore Roosevelt that my grandfather won in what was called in those days an elocution contest in his high school in Dayton, Nevada. So it's eclectic, it's kind of crazy, a lot of poetry. I'll read anything Emily Dickinson ever wrote again, and so that's a smattering of what I've got.
You mentioned Emily Dickinson and the poet side of you. Not many people may be familiar that you also write poetry. A book that you read as a child can have a huge impact on people as they grow into an adult. Are there any from your childhood that you have a special fondness for?
Oh, wow, that's like asking which one of my kids I like the best, I suppose. There's a copy, it isn't the book, but there's a copy of a book that I remember my mother reading me a lot because it was one of my favorites. And it's a modern edition. It's about a dog who was a sailor, and I can't remember exactly, but you know, that would be something from my childhood. And there's a book of nursery rhymes. I remember my mom reading to my brother and I before we went to sleep. Again, he said, which one of those hundreds of volumes do you have to get rid of everything else? I couldn't choose, so.
I hear you. It's really nice to have so many that, depending on your mood or what you've been thinking about or what someone else is thinking about, you can just go to your shelves and pick a book and have it right at your fingertips. Joe, you've been a member of the library's board for over a decade, and you've been such a supporter and a help. Your father was also a supporter and a member of the library's board. Why do you think it's important to support the libraries?
First of all, an institution like the University Libraries system at the University of Nevada is a very complex system. I've learned that. It's not just a building with a bunch of books. You have the satellite libraries around the campus. You have this fantastic knowledge center with millions of volumes. And so my philosophy is, and this sounds trite, maybe like a cliche, but we have to give back to the places that were integral in forming who we are. My experience at the University of Nevada as a student was important, and I feel like I'm giving back. I think there's an incorrect assumption on a lot of people's part that the libraries are self-supporting, but frankly, many of the things that the board does in raising funds to help support some of the other activities, besides just paying salaries and keeping the lights on and buying books, is important. Just having enough money to put light bulbs in a building like the Mathewson Knowledge Center is important. So that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but I think it's important for context and color.
I appreciate that you appreciate that, and you always have, and you have been a spokesman for that. And let me say that last year you wrote a truly remarkable speech about the importance of libraries, and unfortunately you were not able to give it because of COVID, but as our distinguished alum, and we would love to have you share those words with us today, if you are willing to do so.
It'd be my pleasure, Kathy. You bet. Greetings, everyone. My name is Joseph Guild, and I'm honored to be a longtime library lover, University Libraries board member, and the 2020 University of Nevada Reno Distinguished Alumnus from the libraries. I am doubly honored and grateful to be chosen by the University Libraries for this honor because of the important role that libraries play in our society and at our university. A good question to ask is, why do we still need libraries? I hope I can answer that in the rest of this speech. In Gutenberg's time, around 1650, most university libraries had only about 100 or so different titles. With his creation of a movable type system, Gutenberg ushered in a whole new era of civilization. Gone was a laborious method of handwriting books. Now books and periodicals could be mass-produced and disseminated widely to an increasingly literate populace. The first libraries were created, as many of you know, almost 5,000 years ago. The Sumerians started to store clay tablets with the writing known as cuneiform, as a record of commercial transactions and a history of weather events and the impact of those events on agriculture. Almost simultaneously, people began to use these tablets, and in the case of the Egyptians, on papyrus scrolls for recreating stories, myths, and legends handed down in an oral tradition to record and store those stories for the future. Special places were set aside as a central repository of these tablets and scrolls, the first libraries. Thus, human civilization became more so because history was created and stored in places learned people could reflect, read, plan, and try to avoid the mistakes of the past and build upon the successes. The knowledge of human activity in science, mathematics, medicine, agriculture, commerce, religion, and philosophy was accumulating as the centuries passed, and that knowledge needed to be recorded and stored in an easily retrievable way for human civilization to continue its advance. Libraries became that storehouse of accessible cumulative knowledge. Libraries then contain the buried treasure of all of the information not lost, acquired by the human race since we began to form more organized social groups. All of our experience, recorded intuition, our intelligence, our languages, used and unused, our identification of problems, our solutions to those problems, and the faltering steps to reach those solutions, our wars and our times of peace, our laws and the way we make them, and what we know and how we feel about each other and our planet, all contained in our libraries. The great thing about these places is we do not need special skills or a treasure map to learn. We bring our brains and our desire to a library, and we can learn anything. Of course, nowadays, most of us carry the things found in even the largest libraries in the palms of our hands. So, the argument goes, we do not need the buildings and the books because access is a fingertip away. And even though a computer is a useful portable tool with a universe of potential helpful information, the literal place that information came from, in the book stored in that place, is still important for the continued maintenance of all we have achieved over the last 10,000 or more years. Without the basic building blocks, even the computers would be useless. The building housing the books and the books, these are the basic essential threads tying the modern human back over 5,000 years to the first recorders and caretakers of what we know. The virtual and the real need to work together to keep that thread from breaking. A walk into a major library such as the one at UNR should result in a thank you from anyone seeking to learn anything of interest or essential for that person to know. Today, one cannot escape the irony when walking into that knowledge center, even during this pandemic time when there's less traffic. They're surrounded by tens of thousands and thousands and thousands of books. Students are typing and reading on their computers, all the while with real books within an arm's reach. I look at my home library and I'm comforted. There are books from my childhood, books my mother read to me, books I remember my father reading, books from my grandfather's youth, and books he used in his courtroom as a long-serving Nevada District Court judge. A transcript of my grandfather's oral history is on my shelves. I see books I'm reading today and books I used in my law school years. There's a book I wrote and binders with copies of a monthly column I have written for the last 20 or more years for a regional agricultural newspaper. These shelves are full of memories, just as the stacks at the Mathewson Knowledge Center hold millions of human memories for us to read and be connected in this most unique way. Without this place, there would be no university, because just as there can be no real civilization without libraries, a university is that in name only without a library. We should all treasure books and the places where they reside, the libraries. As February National Library Lovers Month comes to a close, I urge you to think about the many books that may have impacted your life, about the librarians that may have helped you navigate the vast and ever-growing universe of information, about the knowledge and history that is cared for and maintained in our libraries, and how our very own university libraries help to support our students, faculty, and community, our civilization. I must again say many, many thanks for this great honor and recognition from the university, which has such a special place in my heart. Happy National Library Lovers Month, and thank you.
Joe, that was wonderful. Thank you. There's so much wisdom in your words. Thank you for being a longtime supporter and advocate for the university libraries. We're so honored and pleased to have you as our 2020 Distinguished Alum for the libraries.
Thank you.
If you would like to know more about the university libraries and how to get involved with the libraries, please go to our website at library.unr.edu. You will find so many reasons to love the library. Thank you and happy Library Lovers Month.